Hi everyone, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Lisa.
Welcome to the Beagles Workshop, where our desire is to bring God glory in everything that we do.
Today in the Beagles Workshop, we're going to be working on 2 custom laser engraved pens. To begin our project, you see that we needed our pen blanks as well as our pen kits. You can purchase these kits at stores such as Klingspor, Rockler, and Woodcraft. Inside the pen kit, you will find all the necessary pieces for assembly. In there are 2 brass pieces, and you can see that Johnny took the wood blank over to the DeWalt miter saw and he cut those pen blanks down to the size of the brass tubes. A teacher friend had asked if we would make these custom pens for her husband's birthday, and she chose white oak and walnut. Once that was finished, we moved over to our Rikon MIDI lathe. And you can see here Johnny is chucking up each of those pieces of wood that we just cut on the miter saw. You will need a 7mm drill bit for this slimline twist pen. Keep in mind, if you're going to make other styles of pens, it will take a different size drill bit. You can see here that Johnny is boring out the inside center of each of these pieces. Once that was finished, we moved over to our work table, and Johnny scuffed up those brass tubes, and then he used a CA glue and accelerator to put those brass tubes inside of the pen blank pieces. Be sure when you're doing this that you get the brass tubes snugly in place, not sticking out either end. We then moved over to the sander, where he just sanded down to the brass tubing and no further. It was then time to move back over to the Rikon MIDI lathe. You can adjust the speeds according to what part of the process that you are in pen making. So for turning, he turned the speed up and he attached the pen blank pieces with a bushing in between. He secured everything and then got his tool ready to begin turning. You can see here that he's making passes left to right, right to left, taking that square down to round. When you're making your pens, you can decide what shape you want them to be. You see here that his hand is resting on that tool rest, and then he's letting his tool work in the center of that wood all the way across. When Johnny makes pens, he likes to make them thicker in the middle, and he likes to take the edges down to the bushing, rounding them as he goes. It really is a technique. You can see here that he's working on the walnut pen first. If you want to, you can stop the lathe at any part of this process and look and see where you are to see if you need to take any more off of any particular spot. And then once you are finished with this, we are ready to move on to the sanding. You turn down the speed of the lathe, and then Johnny just began working through the different grits of sandpaper, knocking off any rough edges and just sanding that down and getting it very smooth. Once he had worked his way through all the grits of sandpaper, he stops the lathe and he hand sands going with the grain. Once this process is done with the walnut pen, we started over with the white oak pen. Again, going down from that square to round, making passes left to right, right to left, resting his hand comfortably on the tool rest, and keeping that tool in the center there, taking off the wood. You can see here him getting those edges down to the bushing. A lot of sanding, again going through all the grits, and then hand sanding with the grain. Now we're over at the computer We use a Lightburn software to customize these using our 10-watt VVOR diode laser. Johnny made a jig to put the pin blank inside of, which tells him where his X and Y axis needs to go. It centers everything up to print on that pin blank there. You can see him lowering the laser to the appropriate setting and getting it tightened up. With the VVOR laser, there are some tabs on the Lightburn software. If you are looking at your screen on the right hand side, there is a button that says frame, and so you can frame it out to make sure that you are on the appropriate spot that you want to be lasering on. You can home that out to get it back to 0, 0, and then you hit start for the laser to start printing. Here you can see us working at the white oak pin first, laser engraving what my coworker had asked us to put on the pin. And we will do that same process with the walnut pin. Every laser is different, so you need to know what speed and settings to set it on by using a test. Once we were finished, we headed on over to the Rikon lathe once again, changing our speed and getting it ready to apply a friction-based wax or polish. It's called Shellawax. You apply several coats and use a pretty good pressure on that. You can see how it shines those pins right up. The first one we were working on here is the walnut, and then we followed the same process with the white oak. Again, it's a friction-based polish called Shellawax, and it sure does make those pins shine. Here you can see what the walnut one looked like before moving on to the white oak. Applying several coats of that friction-based polish, adding pressure to it, and several coats. And here is how the white oak pin turned out. It was then time to move over to the Rockler pin press. In the pin kit, as I spoke of earlier, you will find all the necessary mechanisms to put your pin together once you have turned your wood down. So you can see here Johnny is putting the pieces of the pin together in the press and then turning that handle to get it snug and tight. You will want to decide which is going to be the top and bottom of your pin, line up grains. Something else that I want to mention here is whenever you are using the pin press, there is an ink well that you will get in your pin kit. When it comes time to press that portion into the pin, you may want to press it together and then test it out to make sure that ink well is coming out the top of the pin when you twist it. If it does not, you can put it back in the pin press and go a little bit further in order to get it to the desired spot to where when you twist it, the ink comes all the way out. When we finished with the white oak, we went back to the walnut and repeated that process on the pin press. Squeezing those two pieces together, those pins are ready. And here you can see the two finished laser engraved custom pins and how they turned out. Please subscribe, like, and share our YouTube channel, The Beagles Workshop. Thank you for joining.